Good morning and welcome to those joining us live today and those who are tuning in the future. I'm Richard Mulhern and I will be presenting What's on Your Mind, a series of hangouts from the Association for Photography in Higher Education. I will be asking our contributors to discuss three things on their mind. The points they raise draw on personal experiences of practice, involvement in photographic education and research, and some wider issues affecting the subject. These hangouts are aimed at being both short and informal. They're broadcast live on Google Plus and available at APHE YouTube channel for you to enjoy time and time again and listen to. So I would like to introduce today's participants. Welcome to Sarah Eyre. Sarah is a Northwest-based artist and educator. She is currently working towards her PhD at Myriad at the Manchester School of Art. And has been involved in education with a range of member institutions. Most recently, Sarah's work has been exhibited at the Format Festival 15 at Derby, where it can be seen at the Quad until the 5th of June. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome Sarah. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, hello Richard, hello everybody. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to talk about what's on my mind today.
Pleasure.
And I think the first thing that's on my mind is actually Format Festival. And I have been a couple of times now and enjoyed myself both times. And what I was really kind of glad to see is how varied and confident and engaging the work on display was. And particularly the range of different practices that were being exhibited. I'm particularly interested in stories about how we live, and what was so great about the festival, there was lots and lots of work that not only engaged with stories about kind of how we live, social stories if you like, but did so in really interesting ways, particularly a couple of instances, Sarah Eyre and Mike Mandel and Larry Sultan, who were mixing fact and fiction kind of with confidence and in a self-reflective way. And that's a technique that's been around in documentary film for years, and documentary filmmakers, I think, are really confident with that way of working, back from its early days really, with Grierson, whose famous quote actually said that documentary was the creative treatment of actuality. But I don't think photography has been so confident with mixing those techniques. And what I particularly liked about Meyerhofer's work is that she explored sort of found imagery and some imagery that she'd sort of taken and adjusted herself to produce a meditation on kind of identity and fact, if you like. And my own practice uses constructed photographic techniques, things that are usually associated with fiction, but my work kind of highlights or draws attention to actuality. So yeah, so that's kind of what's on my mind at the moment in terms of kind of my own practice and the fact that it's great to see so much kind of creative and interesting photography in the UK at the moment.
Excellent.
Would you like me to carry on talking?
Yes, please. Would you like? Sorry, Sarah. That was me interrupting you there. Would you like to move on to your second point, please?
Yes. The second thing that's on my mind, I guess, broadly deals with education. I am an educator. I've worked in higher education, different kinds of organisations for about 10 years. I'm also a student myself. I'm doing a practice-based PhD. And I think because I'm doing a PhD, kind of ideas around theory and practice are very, very much in my mind, and how we kind of, what importance we place on theory in the kind of photography curriculum. And I think it's something, there's a lot of noise around theory all the time, some, you know, within the photographic industry, within education. Some people think it's a good thing, some people think it's a bad thing. Same with students. Some students are absolutely terrified of it. I'd say most students are absolutely terrified of it. By the time they leave, actually, some students even enjoy doing a dissertation. However, I think there are certain things like the word theory that actually just problematize it, because really it's something that I think all artists, all practitioners, all photographers do. We think about our work and we use research, and most often now we have to write about our work, and we have to understand the context in which we're working in, and I think that's all kind of theory is really, but I think it's been made into a sort of bigger, scarier thing. So my first thought is, can we change the name? And kind of secondly, really, perhaps in terms of the institutions I work for, there's always a debate about how it should be taught and who should teach it, whether it should be taught, as is very common, as a very separate entity, taught by sort of specialists, academics, who actually probably are or have been practitioners, or should it be taught within the photography departments themselves? Would that be too narrow? Is separating it out, does that mean that students don't quite understand its place in terms of practice? So there's all these debates that I think are interesting. I don't really have the answers. I think there's good and bad practices with both approaches. But you know, I think however it's done, it's so important, because it absolutely, and I find doing a PhD now, I really I'm really trying to understand and question my work, my practice, and where that fits in, not only in a photographic context, but in the context of society as well. You know, and I think it teaches students a responsibility with their image making, which is very important, and also enriches their work and their ideas. I think that's fairly obvious, really. And also it keeps the debate open about what is photography, what are the different practices, how can we kind of use our tools in interesting ways, and it encourages debate. And sometimes those debates are really healthy debates and we'll never agree, but it's important that those kind of questions are asked and those debates are kept open, really. So they're my thoughts on kind of education, photography education.
I was sorry again to interrupt, but I was just going to sort of ask you, is a sort of how your experience of the PhD is kind of feeding into your teaching?
Absolutely, absolutely. In many ways, I mean, in the most obvious way, actually, now I'm a student and kind of receiving information, it kind of puts me in the student's position, and I have to think about, you know, when I don't understand something, I think about, well, you know, as a lecturer, am I making things clear enough for students? You know, and it kind of what it is, it's I'm remembering what it's like to be a student, and I'm remembering really what it's like to actually have some difficulties with understanding, you know, and the confusion. So and in many other ways as well.
That's great, that, Sarah. Do you have a third point that you would like to discuss with us?
Yes, I've got one more point which is kind of linked to the first two, really, and that's generally about sort of just photography and the photography kind of industry or wider context. And I think at format, it reminded me actually what a fantastic medium photography is and what a diverse range of practices there is. And it's good to see that online, in magazines, in galleries, and in advertising as well. But I guess I wonder how we can develop a wider audience of photography, because sometimes I wonder whether a lot of the most interesting work is kind of only seen in photography festivals or exhibitions of photography or photography galleries or photography magazines. And so I'm always thinking about how we can kind of develop the audience for our work beyond just the kind of photography framework, if you like. And I think, you know, that's maybe partly the fault of photography itself. You know, there is a great deal of cross-disciplinary practice out there, but I think sometimes you see sectors in the industry kind of pigeonholing certain kinds of photographic practice, which I think can be a problem. And there's always these kind of debates about photography being in crisis, and in sectors of it possibly, and certainly in terms of funding for work, absolutely, but also in terms of the medium and the engagement with the medium across professional, amateur, vernacular, you know, whether it's considered conceptual fine art or commercial or fashion. There's an awful lot of fantastic work going on, and I think it's really in danger of just being pigeonholed all the time. Well, that's just photography, therefore the wider art world may not be interesting, or that's just, I think the worst insult in the world is work being written off as being, oh, that's just fine art photography. In fact, what really is on my mind is I'd like to ban that phrase, fine art photography, because it's really detrimental to the kind of engaged practice.
Yes. Do you feel that term just closes the work down considerably?
Absolutely, yeah, because a lot of work, and we look at somebody like Vivian Sassen, whose work is was in the photographer's gallery, it's in magazines, some work is commercial, some of it is her private practice, but all of it kind of is engaging and rich, and it works on many levels. So just to pigeonhole work like that as, oh, it's just fashion, or it's just commercial, or it's just fine art, I think can just close down readings, and there's a lot of practice kind of like that. So yeah, ban the word or think of a better word.
Fantastic. Sarah, that's really great. Is there anything else you would like to add before I close down today?
I don't think so. Just again, thank you very much for listening to me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah, for being part of the Hangout and for sharing your ideas, your experience, and your expertise. It's really great to sort of listen to you talk so frankly about your practice and your ideas and experiences. So thank you once again, and thank you to everybody else who has joined us for the Hangout, and those of you that are listening in the future. I hope you enjoy this fascinating conversation that we've had. I hope you can join us for the next Hangout, which details of which will appear on Twitter and the APHE website. And so that all it really remains for me to do is to say thank you and goodbye for today. So speak to you all soon. Thank you.